It is 7 minutes after 8 o'clock, and it is time now for was it Common Sense Matters? I had to make sure I was getting it right there.
Common Sense Matters.
The program
Yes.
here with the Democratic Party. And ladies, how are y'all doing today?
We're doing fine, Ricky. Thank you.
Yeah, two of Dad's favorites in the building right now, and I kind of enjoy talking to them as myself.
Oh, yeah, we've had a good visit this morning.
Nancy Silvertooth and Betty Fraley with us this morning. Ladies, how are y'all doing?
We're doing fine,
Making
Ricky.
it.
We're making it. Yeah, we're here. We made it.
Yeah. One more time.
Okay, we want to wish everybody a good morning out there and welcome you to Common Sense Matters, sponsored by the Franklin County Democratic Party. We meet every third Thursday in the county annex at 6 p.m. and you're invited to come. Betty Fraley and I today have two goals in mind. Sometimes we get off track, but we want to try to explain what the new Inflation Reduction Act does for all of us, ordinary people, middle-class people. And then we'll be talking about education and how it's sad that public education seems to be under attack, and our governor and legislature, a Republican legislature, trying to privatize education. I'm going to turn it over to Betty, but first of all, we both want to congratulate all the winners, the candidates who won in the recent elections, and to those who didn't win, our hearts go out to you too, you and your supporters. We've been there. Betty and I both, I campaigned over a period of 24 years plus. Betty and Representative George Fraley campaigned for years, and she'll be saying something about him, especially in a few minutes. And Betty is, as we speak, a state committee woman, Democratic Party state committee woman.
Yes, I'm coming off.
Coming off, right.
I did not run this time. This is the first time I haven't been on the ballot. I ran, I think, the first time in '92, so I've been a state Democratic Executive Committee woman since ¡92.
Right.
30 years.
And, yeah. And in addition to that, of course, campaigning constantly. You know, the representatives that have to come up for election every 2 years.
They campaign all the time.
Yeah, right. Campaign all the time.
And his district was 100 miles long, and we went somewhere every night. If it wasn't somewhere, we were on the phone.
But anyway, we our hearts go out to all of you, and I appreciate everyone that puts forth the effort to jump in there and run. It's a
gutsy thing.
It's a gutsy thing, exactly.
And thank you for running. Those of you who are not successful, I know how that feels too.
Me too.
So my heart goes out to all of you, but thank you again. Thank you for putting your name out there and getting involved. That's what we're supposed to do.
And speaking of getting involved, we want to stress, folks, you need to. We have more than 27,000 registered voters in Franklin County, and I believe Miss Margaret Otley's figures show that about 30% of that figure voted. And you need to be interested. You need to just listen to your radio and your TV, and listen to people that you can trust what they say. If I don't know something myself, I try to find somebody that I can trust that does. And I'm going to hush and turn it over to Miss Betty, who's going to talk about first this Inflation Reduction Act. Then we'll be getting on education.
You know, first of all, I'm going to remind you that, and I almost have to do this, today is the anniversary of my husband's passing 6 years ago. And I just want to remind you of a few things that he did for this county as county mayor and also as state representative. That was his calling. He knew what to do to get things done. You know, at one time, I had the total amount of money that he brought back to this county, but I don't know, I had misplaced it, but I wish in grants. That was one of his callings, certainly. He was instrumental in bringing Nissan here when he was in the courthouse. He did the pre-K classes. The biggest thing, I guess, was the refurbishing of the square. And Governor Bredesen was in town, and Beth Roten said to me over at the old Prince Drugstore, was where the gathering was, said, could you get me an audience with Governor Bredesen? And I said, yes. She said, Governor Bredesen, would you step out on the sidewalk with me? And he did. And she said, now I want you to look at these old sidewalks. And he said, we need an uplift. So he said, well, you get somebody to write a grant, and you tell Representative Fraley, and we'll see what we can do. Yvonne Stewart wrote the grant. George took the grant, and Bredesen said after that, said, when George Fraley comes and asks you for something, you just may as well get yes on your lips, because he's going to bother you to death till you say yes. And said George Fraley was not a show horse, he was a workhorse. So therefore the square became refurbished, and isn't it beautiful? And it is done with our sales tax money that we get to keep in Winchester and not send back to the state of Tennessee, so it costs the taxpayers nothing. We kept our sales tax. It was extended to 2022, and now it has been extended to 2026, if I understand it correctly.
Yep.
So the fruits of his labor are still making Winchester beautiful, and everybody that sees our square is just overwhelmed by the beauty of it. 6 towns, I believe it was 6 towns, 4 or 6 towns in the whole state of Tennessee got that. And because of Yvonne Stewart, Beth Roten, and George Winchester was able to get that. He got the pre-K classes. He also did the 911 naming of the streets and roads when he was in the courthouse. He got the convenience centers. The big thing just recently I noticed was they have refurbished the Mansford Bridge. He got that road changed to a state road because it went by the state park. And if we had not had it, if it had not been a state road, then the county would have had to refurbish that bridge, and the state did that. So he just did a lot of stuff and wanted to, because he loved Franklin County. And I just had to say that because today is the anniversary of his death. And again, congratulations to everybody who ran. And I have a summary of the Inflation Reduction Act, and a lot of it does affect you and me, and I'm proud of a lot of it. It's going to expand Medicare benefits, free vaccines, and you're going to be able to buy hearing aids over the counter. You're going to be able to get a shingle shot free. That was not free to me, certainly. It will lower energy bills, cuts energy bills by $500 to $1,000 per year, makes historic climate investment, reduces carbon emissions by roughly 40% by 2030. It will lower health care costs, saves the average enrollee $800 a year in the Affordable Care Act marketplace, allows Medicare to negotiate 100 drugs over the next decade, and requires drug companies to rebate back price increases higher than inflation. Now, as a Medicare recipient also, you will not pay more than $35 a month for your insulin. And I'm thrilled to death that we're going to be able to negotiate drug prices. If you are a young person, if you don't think after 50 things are going to happen, they are. I'm 88. I am high maintenance, let me tell you. There's no way to make enough money as a retired person to keep up with the drug prices. I told the pharmacist the other day, I said, aren't you glad to have me as a customer? You're going to get to retire much earlier because of me, I think. Because it's just it's unreal, the cost. I've got one prescription that costs $400 a month after the insurance pays their part, after I go into the donut hole. Creates manufacturing jobs, more than 60 billion invested will create millions of new domestic clean manufacturing jobs. Invest in disadvantaged communities, cleaning up pollution, and taking steps to reducing environmental injustice, and $60 billion for environmental justice. Closes the tax loopholes used by the wealthy. A 15% corporate minimum tax, a 1% fee on stock buybacks, and I read an article on that last night about the stock buybacks. The big corporations, when they got their money, didn't give it to the employees and didn't pay their stockholders. They bought back stocks that they lost during the recession, and protect families and small businesses making $400,000 or less. If you make $400,000 or less, and that's most of us, then our taxes will not be increased at all.
Betty, what about, I think you mentioned, I picked it up from you, the $2,000 cap. Do we get through in Medicare, do we get a $2,000 cap on drugs?
Did I say that? And settling at $2,000. Now in 2024 is $4,000. You can't pay, as a Medicare recipient, you cannot pay more than $4,000 out of pocket in 2024, but then by 2025, more than $2,000. And I believe my out of pocket last year was something over $5,000.
It gets there, it gets high in a hurry.
Well, after 50. Before 50, I didn't even wear glasses. And then after 50, everything happens, and I'm telling you, be prepared. When I took health care insurance, I didn't even have to take it. I was insured through George and Arnold Center. But in order for the teachers to get it, I signed up for it, and thank goodness I did, because I've used it all, let me tell you. And I still have to pay a supplement if I'm in the hospital for any big length of time. And now this is still about this is about the farmers and ranchers part of the thing. We need every farmer to contribute to reducing food inflation and feeding the nation and the world. The Inflation Reduction Act will help keep distressed farmers farming and provide assistance to farmers who have experienced discrimination in the USDA's leading programs. The law includes relief for distressed USDA borrowers whose agricultural operations are at risk through loan modifications or payments. Financial assistance to farmers who have experienced past discrimination in USDA leading programs. And then the new tax, it will make the tax code fair. President Trump and congressional Republicans in 2017, that tax law only made an unfair tax system worse. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 is a critical step forward in making our tax code fair. It will raise revenue by ensuring that high-income people and large corporations pay their share that they already owe, cracking down on large profitable corporations that currently get away with paying no federal income tax, imposing a 1% surcharge, and I've already met on the buyback. The rich and powerful get away with playing by a separate set of rules, and that will be stopped with, and then I already said that if you make less than $400,000 a year, that your taxes will not be increased. And that's about all that I had on, I don't know a lot of the details yet, because a lot of the details are not out.
Right, and
But what I did learn about it, I like.
Oh, and of course, I pay attention especially to the health care part of it, and the $800 that they mentioned. What benefits people who obtain insurance through healthcare.gov, the marketplace, the Affordable Care Act that we're talking about. What helps their cost, and the lower the income, the more it helps, is what they call premium tax credits. That, for instance, if a policy costs a person, and it easily can, $1,000, if the premium is $1,000, they'll get, the eligible people will get the $800 off that. And so I'm glad to see that the Affordable Care Act insurance premiums are going to be helpful. Starting, well, even now they are, but starting November the 1st, we'll be signing people up for next year.
All right, then changing the tune, I wanted to mention the candidate that is running for state representative is Bruce Manuel, and he has a card that has been a mail out, and it says something we can all agree on: protect our teachers' pay, protect our right to vote, protect our public schools, and protect our rural hospitals. And then under what else on his card, he says expand Medicaid, so that this is something he would work to do. Expand Medicaid so that 400,000 uninsured Tennesseans will have access to health insurance. This is our money that we have allowed to be used in other states. We've lost 14 rural hospitals in Tennessee because we did not accept Medicaid, because our legislature would not vote to expand Medicaid for Tennesseans who are in need of insurance.
And Betty, I'd like to inject something here. I have a copy. When I was circuit court clerk, fortunate enough to have been elected circuit court clerk, a county official in Franklin County, I was so thankful, and I so wanted to do a good job and do what I wanted, do what I was supposed to do. I'd try to study up on the law and follow the law, and I would remember my oath, the oath that I took. You'd have to take every year, or every time you were elected. And this is just a portion of the oath that says, oath of members of the General Assembly. That's the oath. This is the oath that our state representative and senators take. And just a part of it says this. Of course, it says that I solemnly swear or affirm that as a member of the General Assembly, I will in all appointments vote without favor, affection, partiality, or prejudice, and that I will not propose or assent to any bill, vote, or resolution which shall appear to me injurious to the people. I have that highlighted. Voting against expanding Medicaid just jumps out at me. They've got to know that people suffer and die without insurance, but yet our Republican legislators continue to refuse to expand Medicaid, even though several, even Republican states out there, have.
Yeah. And it has proved to be successful.
We need Democrat representatives in the state legislature.
And then, you know, of course, you know that I'm not going to be on without talking about public education. Public education is really being attacked and torn down because Republicans want to privatize public education. And I'm sure that you're aware of the fact that the biggest step that they've taken right now is making the school board people run partisan. Everything it's a small thing, but it's a big thing when it comes. The last thing that any school system needs is more politics in education. We do not need any politics at all in education. It's there, but we don't need it at all. Now, I want to read to you from a quote. Our governor wants to do 50 charter schools in Tennessee. Those charter schools are going to take away from public education. My question is this: why do we have to start charter schools? Why can't we spend that tremendous amount of money on the schools that are already there and make them better and educate everybody, instead of pulling a few people out and building a new school and going to all that expense? It just does not make sense to me. But the person that he has chosen to pattern this by is Larry Arnn, who is Hillsdale College's president. And here's what he said about teachers. Teachers are trained in the dumbest parts of the dumbest colleges in the country, said Arn, president of Michigan's, now this is Michigan, it's Hilldale College, which has an agreement with the administration to open 50 charter schools again in Tennessee. You don't have to be an expert to educate a child because basically anybody can do it, he said. Arn's attack drew statewide bipartisan condemnation from educators, school boards, lawmakers, and citizens, while the governor soft-pedaled Arn's remarks, didn't take up for the teachers at all. TEA's response was swift and the strongest of all, calling on the governor to limit the power of the state's charter commission to restore local control in public education. Charters and vouchers are now targeting every school district and community in Tennessee. Undermining schools is the privatizer's first step. It's really, it's a serious thing. And then here was another one thing I wanted to share. Working in public education is unfortunately an inherently political profession. Elected officials from the local school board and the county commission to the state legislature and Congress are making decisions every day that directly impact your profession and your students. This is why it's so important to be a member of our association. Do you realize that the State Board of Education, in Tennessee, does not have a single educator on it? That's the bottom line right there. Not a single educator. Teachers have got to have more say in what goes on. Did you know that?
The state school board doesn't have anyone with an education background.
That's right. So that tells the whole story right there. I would like to see.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No.
Like, I don't think I'd staff a hospital with the chief surgeon and not have someone that's actually performed a surgery before.
I don't think so either.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
It's not a good idea. That's the reason we're in the mess we're in. We're not educators. Look what they've done. They've taken books out of the library. See, you don't wonder why we're short-handed in education. I mean, we can't get teachers. They won't let them teach. They've got all these Chromebooks, and now they don't have total access to the internet. They're telling them what they can put up on the internet even, with all these nice big Chromebooks. I noticed in Texas they pulled the Diary of Anne Frank out of the library. And it's coming here. They took and one of the legislators in Nashville wanted to burn all the books that they'd taken out of the library.
I've seen this video before. Please
let teachers teach, and please let doctors doctor, and scientists do their job, and you just legislate. I'm just don't take over the schools. We have been trained to teach.
What was the reason for taking the Diary of Anne Frank down?
Now, tell me that. You tell me that, because it has unpleasant things that children can be exposed to. Unpleasant things. But it's history. It doesn't matter whether you like history or not. It's there.
I mean, have you read the Bible? There's some unpleasant things in the Bible.
Oh, yes.
Yes, there are. Yes, I did. I read the Bible through during COVID. I read the Bible all the way through for the first time.
There's some unpleasant things in the Bible.
Yes, there are.
We're going to take that off shelves also?
I hope not. But that just should not.
Oh, that baffles me.
Well, it does me too. And so you don't wonder why teachers are getting out of the profession. I taught at the right time. When I taught, the parents were on my side. The community was on my side. But it's not that way anymore. And they give them more assignments, more things to do, and more guidelines to meet. Every time you turn around, they've added something else for teachers to do. And I really feel sorry for them. I pray every day. In my prayers, I pray for the schools and the teachers.
Teachers, yeah.
Now, I'm not far against private education. We have a wonderful private school here, but private school is not for everybody, and this public school system has to be saved. But this legislature is certainly not doing anything to save it. And when I read what I read to you about Bruce Manuel, wouldn't it be wonderful to have somebody there fighting for education and not fighting for vouchers and fighting for charter schools? We've got to have that, you all, in order to save our public education.
Miss Betty, the Diary of Anne Frank wasn't the only thing they pulled from that library.
No.
The Bible was also.
Was it? Can
my
you believe that?
But they have reinstated, I haven't read if they've reinstated the Bible yet, but they did reinstate Anne Frank after public outroar.
Well, it should have.
But they pulled both from the bookshelves of that school system.
And now our legislature has increased the starting salary of a teacher to $40,000. $40,000. Now think about paying all that money for your education. Now, and you know, teacher training, this Hillsdale College man has hit on teacher training. Did you know that you've been in school 16 years when you become a teacher? You've been in school 16 years, and look how many different teacher styles you have observed in those 16 years. From first grade through 12th grade, and then all your college professors, you've seen that many people do the same job that you're about to do. So you have some training just by observing, you know. But this is just absurd to think that our training was done in the dumbest colleges and the dumbest, and anybody can teach. Anybody can't teach. That's just not the way it is. And then I'd like to spend, you know, a little bit of time about the unfairness here. When we get a raise here, they say across the board 4% raise. I have preached this over and over again. That is so unfair. There are two positions, I understand, at our local school board that makes, in addition to the superintendent. The superintendent should make more, and he does. But there are two positions that make close to $100,000. Okay, a 4% across the board raise goes to that person, and that person gets $333 a month. When you divide it, they get $4,000. If he makes $70,000, he gets $2,800. If he makes $100,000, he gets $4,000. The beginning teacher gets $133 a month. So look how unfair that is. I want to see the day that money, if you have to give everybody a raise, of course I'd like to see it just go to the classroom teacher. But if everybody has to have a raise, send me that lump sum and let me divide it equally among all the employees, and not give the ones who are already making the big bucks again. That's the reason we've got what we've got now, is because they have been added. Every time a teacher gets a meager raise, they get a big raise. So that's the reason we're where we are now. So
Got a phone call.
Got a phone call.
Oh, okay, good.
You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm a retired teacher. I also worked at the Tennessee Department of Education at MTSU as well. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the siphoning off of our taxpayer dollars going to charter schools. The Department of Education here in Tennessee has given millions of dollars in contracts to private universities, many of which are out of state. That money could have been used in our state to shore up our education programs here, to give money for graduate students in our state. It would have supported our taxpayer dollars at universities. When I worked at the Department of Education, I noticed that our last two Republican governors had filled seats that were normally nonpartisan all the way down to almost the secretarial level. And so I worked with people who had not only never taught, they had never attended a public school in their lives. And they were put in charge of creating curriculum, many of them, and in training teachers. And I've heard that the quote that public schools just don't like charter schools because of the competition. But it's not competition if the charter schools don't have to follow the same rules. They set up a separate school board for these charter schools. They're not judged on the same requirements that public schools are required to follow. So it may look to parents as if this is a better education. But for one thing, these charter schools can cherry pick who they add to their roles, who their students are. They may not, and do not usually, add the students that are at the bottom, the students who are disabled, the students who have learning disabilities. And last I looked, these are members of our community, and we should be supporting them, because we only go forward if we are supporting everyone in this community demographically. We need to support the kids whose parents are not involved enough to be involved in the school system, and not just those who try to have choice. I want to mention that the vouchers, and I'm like Betty, I believe in private school education and that everybody should have that right, but I don't believe that that money should be taken away from public schools. The voucher bill that passed was done under questionable parliamentary procedures by Glenn Casada, who, as you know, has been arrested on federal charges of bribery and conspiracy to commit money laundering. He funneled public monies into his own pocket. And that's what these charter schools are doing. They often don't have they don't have student-teacher ratios like public schools do, because part of the day is spent, and sometimes in some of them that I know of in Nashville, half of the day is spent on computer systems. And who owns the computer systems? Who is making money on those computer systems? It is the charter schools. They set up a separate system for not only getting money for students, but also for the software and technology that they use. I think that vouchers are a threat to the American system, where we have public schools, and the constitutional principle that government may not promote religious education. Everybody who lives here who is for private school education and vouchers thinks that it's going to go to Christian schools. It's going to go to every kind of school, whether it's Christian, Muslim, or any other type of religion. And that's the truth of what's going to happen with that money. I don't think people who think that far down the line. And when you mentioned, this is my last point, when the teachers are not on the school board, the state school board, I want to mention that they also removed the teacher representative who was over teacher retirement. Now think about that, teachers. It's time to get involved and to vote Democratic, because this is what's happening to your resources. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
And-
You said some things that I didn't know,
And
certainly.
I had written down here, there's nothing more dear to us than our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and for goodness sakes, we need to, as the caller mentioned, vote. Educate yourselves. You don't have to go far to know what's going on here, but our children and their education is at stake.
All right, the next thing that TEA plans to do is try to get health insurance for teachers at a reasonable price. Guess what? All they asked was that TEA has demanded educators get the same overall benefits as state employees. They don't have the same insurance as state employees.
That doesn't make sense. Why would you not have your largest group of employees put in
So
there?
I'm telling you the unfairness that teachers suffer. And, you know,
Caller again.
okay.
Go ahead, caller.
Yes, my name is Brenda Craig. Before, I would like to comment on several things. I do believe our school system here in Franklin County is failing. I have no idea how to correct those problems, but something must be done, and I think it starts at the top of the food chain. We have to have a better representation at the top of the food chain, that being the superintendent. Also, I agree that our teachers should get paid for what they're worth. I believe that we should give them equal pay to anyone in the state in order to be able to recruit them. So, and someone needs to work on a plan to better educate our children, get our test scores up, and therefore they can go out into the public and achieve more success in life. Also, I agree that our school money needs to go to charter schools if in fact that's what the parent wants. The parent should be able to have the choice of where their child goes to school, whether it be public school or charter school, and that money needs to follow them with that child. And but I don't have a child at school, but I have a great grandson, and I believe he's getting the quality education that he needs to be. But that's neither here nor there. But however, we need to get back to the basics, the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic. That's where I am with schools. It starts at the top, and we have to pay our teachers what they're worth. Also, I read the Inflation Act. Actually, it is a Green New Deal bill. It's very little to benefit the general public. I personally could not see where it said that anybody under $400,000 will not have their taxes increased. From what I understand, the Republican Party tried to get that put in writing, and it was not. They would not put that in there, and I don't see where it says $400,000 or less would not increase. If you can point me to that, I would love to see that in writing. Also, most of all of these things will not even start to take effect until 2023. We need inflation and cutting right now. We need inflation cutting right now. People are hurting, just everyday people that's trying to make a living. We need something to cut inflation right now. Also, with the drug negotiations, that may not even come to fruition until 2024, because they have a whole year or better to negotiate these drugs, and they pick the drugs, not the drugs that is the most popular drugs. And also, I did not see it say anything about reducing insulin. I did not see that at all. The out-of-pocket, the $2,000, that again, that's not until 2023 or 2024. That doesn't happen. Like I say, this is not inflation cutting right now. We need to cut inflation right now.
Nothing happens.
I don't know what the answer to the problem is, but we need, people is hurting now, not 2023. You said the jobs, 60 billion jobs created. All of that is green jobs, green new deals, putting power plants, putting things of that nature. How is that going to help Franklin County? How is that really going to help Franklin County? Are we going to put a power plant here in Franklin County? But like I say, most of these green jobs is going to be in these green cities and so forth. So I don't know that Franklin County or even Tennessee is going to realize these jobs. And they have put the stability of the union job out there in the language of the bill, which is really going to increase the cost of the projects, which I'm all good for. Fair labor. I'm all for fair labor, but we need to also get the best bang for our buck.
All right, thank you for calling, ma'am.
and
We
all-
appreciate it.
You want me to stop?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
and the information that I got came from the briefing room, and all I did was put in Inflation Reduction Acts, and the 400,000 thing. Every broadcast I've heard has had that in there. I mean, all the news that I've heard has had the $400,000 in there, and then it's also in the, if you pull this up on your computer, and the $35 thing for insulin is also in there. I got this off the computer, and it came from the briefing room, and it's a statement and release that I received from, it says, one page says summary of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, and it certainly is in there. So I don't know why it would not have been every printout that you could get.
It occurs to me, of course, what she mentioned, it's not a perfect, our administration got past what they could get past, and it's something,
And
even
it's
though
something
some of it,
is, and it nothing in government happens overnight. You know, I didn't expect it to take place tomorrow, but isn't it nice that it's going to? You know, we have something to look forward to. I'm thrilled to death. This was not what the administration wanted. They wanted much more, but they didn't get much more. But this is all they could get at the time. So I'm thrilled to death to have this. Sorry that there are people who are disappointed.
Right. Well, and I mentioned something that has really bothered me since I heard it, and that is this is off of education right now, but community corrections is a program that has been in effect, I think, since about 1985. I got some information from Diane Hand, who worked in the community corrections program as a probation officer for years. I think it started with Haslam, but the present Governor Lee administration has, as I understand it, dismantled the community corrections program, and that was a probation program that defendants went into. They usually go into, when they're sentenced, they'll go into what they call state probation. Then they don't make it. They mess up, go before the judge again, and he'll basically sentence them to the penitentiary. But if they qualify, they can go into the community corrections program, which is a more intensely supervised program than state correction, and then state probation. Sorry, and that is going to, I'm afraid, just pour more prisoners into our prison systems, because defendants who would ordinarily be supervised and on probation, before they go to the penitentiary, that's their last chance to make it, and this administration just dismantled it, did away with it. What's the purpose of that? Privatization? Are they willing to just privatize and put more prisoners in the system? It's hard to understand, really, but having worked in the court system and having seen what probation officers do, and it just sort of blows my mind that this administration would do this.
And on the national level, not a single Republican voted for this, so this means that Republicans are not happy with it.
Well, as I understand it, it's a Tennessee program. It's under Tennessee statute. But what got my attention just recently was there's a little blip that a couple of Republican state senators were astounded that Governor Lee had done this without going through the legislature. Yeah. He managed to I think what he did is change the grant requirements for the companies that administer the program, made it impossible or almost impossible for them to qualify. Therefore, they have nobody to administer the program. And it's scary to me. It is scary. It's going to affect not only the defendants and their families, defendants who may have been getting treatment through this program before going to the penitentiary, and it's it's going to burden state probation officers with all these people, and it's just
Well,
a
it surprises me that he's done that. And I was aware of the fact that he had, but it surprises me because he has been very supportive of Christine's program, you know. But he turned around then and he's not
Turned around.
consistent, you know, in what he does.
There's
And just like when he was elected, I thought, well, how wonderful, his wife is a teacher, so he will really be kind to education, but he's not, see? So it really disturbs me that he's not consistent in what he does do. You never know how he's going to react to something. But he has been very supportive of the reentry program, and then turn around and do this with criminals, you know.
right. Well, and of course that the answer to it is, people, is vote. Many of you out there, about 70% of registered voters did not even vote in our last election, according to the statistics from the election office. Please care, please care. You can make a difference when you put your finger on that little button and punch it. That is just a powerful an act as the President of the United States or anybody else.
How do you not vote? I don't understand. How do you not vote?
My thing is, everyone says, "Oh, my vote doesn't count. My vote doesn't count." We have a tie.
You have a tie.
We have
There's
a tie.
in this
Yes,
county
yeah, right now.
One vote.
Would
There's
have
one
made-
person that did
Just
a
one
write-in.
person, that's
If
right.
That person would have voted for one of the two candidates, one of the two people who want this job, not a write-in for somebody who wasn't willing to campaign.
That's right.
If you'd have voted for one of the two people who actually took the initiative to go fill out the paperwork and get people in that district to sign and get them there, if you'd have voted for one of those two people, then they'd have the county commission seat. But now we're having a special called election. Well, not special call, it's going to be in the November election.
Yeah.
But a special election for that seat, where now those people
District
get to go
4.
out in District,
Yeah.
no, it's District 2, I think.
District 2.
It's Huntland, Broadview.
It's Scotty Riddle,
Yeah.
and
Scotty
James
Riddle and James
County
Pinto.
Yeah, but that's
and
not
I
the-
believe the county
Is it-
commission. I believe
I
it's
don't
on
remember which
the
one it is.
agenda for a county commission meeting coming
Well,
up.
it's the agenda for the county commission is going to be with Chris Guest stepping down and them appointing the school board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they choose to, they don't have to appoint the school board, because that's going to be District 4 school board seat.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
sorry, that's right. Scotty Riddle and them is going to be selected by the county commission.
That's right.
The school
Yeah, it's
board for
a-
District
yeah.
4 is going to be voted on.
Yeah.
That's right. I had it backwards. So now it's the county commission is going to be selected by 15 county commissioners if they all show up, because some of them might not show up for a special call
Yeah.
meeting because they didn't get reelected
Yeah.
or they're not in office anymore.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
I'd be
that's
willing
right.
to say that a couple of them might not show up to that meeting. And then now it's going to be selected by those who show up are going to pick that county commissioner out
Yeah.
of those two individuals. And then you're at the school board seat that Chris will resign from on the 30th. That'll be selected in November, and that's District 4.
Yeah. District 4.
And that's
And one person has already come forth.
Bruce Shaw's already announced that he's going to run.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple others that are sitting in there. I've heard from two already who have talked to me, but they've not officially announced.
Oh, sure enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, the more the merrier. I'm all for people running. The one thing I meant to mention also, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, was last week the big thing, or week before last, I guess, was the big thing about the veterans thing on the national level that none of the Republicans voted for. For veterans, and Jon Stewart, who used to be on the Daily Show, got involved in that, and finally it did pass, but not a single. Our Haggerty and Marsha Blackburn both voted against veterans, and then I noticed where she came to Fort Campbell to for something, and had just voted against the bill for them to be able to treat Agent Orange, I believe it was, and I had a brother-in-law with Agent Orange. I had 3 brothers-in-law in World War II and a brother, and then my son was in the Desert Storm, and I had one brother-in-law that was in all of them, Korea and everything. My husband was in the Korean thing, so I'm all for veterans, and anything that the government will do for them, I'm all for my representatives voting for it, but
Right.
they did not.
And it seems that if you just watch what the Tennessee legislature has done, what the other party, what they've done, and what Democrats have done or tried to do. Democrats try to pass legislation that helps individual people, individuals, families, children, people that need health care. If you ask even a good Republican, well, why are you against expanding Medicaid? Oh, it's big government. We're not for big government. No, no, we don't want the federal government
Yet they
involved.
want to take over education, health care,
Right.
and everything else.
But individual people who are actually sick and dying, I talk to them that call up and they don't qualify for the Affordable Care Act, but yet if they do not have, if they do not fall into a category that is covered by Medicaid, they're just out in the cold, no insurance, and that's just not. It's just unexplainable to me how a legislator could vote against expanding Medicaid for everybody.
Didn't even let it come to the floor, Nancy.
No, they killed it in
It
committee.
was designed not to even come to the floor. If it had come to the floor, it would have passed. But they did not allow it to even come for a vote, which to me is so unfair. I asked Janice Bolin if there was any way that it could have been worded that she would have voted for it, and she said no.
I noticed we might have 2 minutes left, and my memory, I can remember so well the picture, and he was in a red shirt, of the guy from, they were sponsored by the Heritage Foundation, which opposes things like this. I can't remember their exact group, but he was, when they had been to Nashville, when our legislature voted on this, and he was bragging that they had enough power that they could that they got it defeated, didn't even give it out of committee.
Yeah.
And this was somebody from, as I say, they're sponsored by the Heritage Foundation. I can't remember what this group exactly was called, but he was, I think I saved a copy of it. Big red shirt, bragging
From
about.
another state.
Right.
That had come in
That had
to tell
come
us how to
in
do it.
and had threw their weight around and convinced our legislators to vote against it. Or to,
And
not to kill it.
400,000 people without insurance.
So y'all educate yourselves out there, and you especially that are not voting, please, please, your vote, as Ricky pointed out, your vote does matter.
Are we through?
I don't know, are you?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening to us.
Murfreesboro Pike, where a group of people were fighting and shots were fired. 2 people were shot, taken to the hospital, and are recovering. No one is in custody yet.